Hi folks, it's Jay again. Hey, this is going to be a quick reply video to that video about hand guards for the 1301 and why you would want to choose one over the other. Hi folks, this is going to be a quick reply video. Hi folks, it's Jay. This is going to be a quick reply video to that video on 1301 hand guards and why one would choose an OEM handguard over an aftermarket one. I have my OEM handguard here on my 1301, and I also have my Briley with all the doodads on it. I just figured I'd do a quick overview as to the pros and cons of each and why one would want to choose one over the other. So for the OEM handguard, the biggest benefit, the biggest pro of the OEM handguard is that it's free. It comes with your gun. You don't have to buy it, you don't have to upgrade it. It's not an aftermarket part, it's just there. And you know, if budgetary concerns are something that you have to deal with, sometimes that's what you gotta do. You use what comes with it, and that's okay. It works, it gets the job done. It's lightweight, and if weight is a primary priority or consideration for you, that might be a benefit. Personally, for me, for a defensive firearm, weight really isn't a consideration for me, other than issues that I have with my injured hand, but that's neither here nor there. I prefer a little bit more weight out front. I think it helps mitigate muzzle rise, keeps me on target a little better. But for, if this is gonna be a bush gun and you want an absolute, keep it simple, stupid type setup, the OEM guard works perfectly well in that capacity. It has a really, really great grip texture. One of the better grip textures that I've found for any polymer handguard for any firearm anywhere. It's really, really nice. It's simple, but it works. The slimness of it, a lot of people will find that to be a benefit. I personally am not a big fan of really slim handguards. I like something with a little bit more girth to it. I think it feels a little bit more controllable when I'm driving the gun. So that's not quite as much of a benefit for me personally, but it is something that you could consider a benefit of the OEM handguard. And I think that's about where those pros end for the OEM handguard. It's free, it's lightweight, it's slim, it's got good checkering, all right? It's got good grip. The cons for me, and for a defensive shotgun, in my opinion, far outweigh the pros of the OEM handguard in this application. The biggest con for me is just the fact that there is no protection from the barrel when you're out training. Now, people will say that, well, it's a home defense gun. You're never gonna shoot more than one mag tube in a defensive situation. And that is entirely true. That is absolutely right. From a statistical standpoint, the chances of you heating this gun up to a point where you can't touch it in a defensive situation is none. Not slim to none. It's just none. It's just never going to happen. It doesn't happen that way. Okay. So yes, for a defensive shotgun, being able to protect your hand from the barrel during a defensive situation is a non-issue. That isn't why an exposed barrel is a problem. The problem is that if you're going to use a firearm for home defense, you need to practice with that firearm. You need to train with that firearm. You need to put rounds through that firearm. And the problem with an exposed barrel is that barrels get hot. They get hot, especially when you run fast and you run hard, they get really hot. They can burn your hands, and I don't like burning my hands. When you burn your hands when you're shooting a gun, it makes you not want to shoot it anymore. It makes you not want to shoot as long. It makes you not want to practice as hard. And so for me, not being able to run a range day without burning my thumbprint off, it's a no-go. That's just an absolute right out the door, non-starter, no-go for a defensive firearm, in my opinion. The fact that it's slim, again, some people find that a pro. I kind of find it as a con. I feel like it doesn't allow me to control the firearm as well. And it doesn't allow, the fact that it doesn't protect the barrel also means that you can't use a strong controlling C-clamp thumb over bore grip for any amount of time. And again, that's an evolved philosophy of use. It's an evolved TTP that didn't really exist, 10, 15, 20 years ago. And so it's something that not all shotguns have kind of come up to. A lot of the modern philosophy of defensive and combat combat firearm use hasn't really trickled down as much into shotgun design, other than, the Israeli ones and the cylinder fed ones and all of the various crappy box fed ones. There's a bunch of stopgaps and a bunch of stuff that has kind of made its way, but when it comes to handguards, that hasn't, and exposing barrels, that hasn't really come through for the most part for OEM designs. So that's a definite minus for me. The fact that you can't attach any accessories to it without having to Bubba Smith this, Dremel drill and all that stuff. I know some people are like, well, you save money doing that. That's true, you do save money, but you don't have a lot of space underneath the handguard for things like M-lock or key mod attachments. So you end up doing a lot of direct mounting, you do a lot of taping and a bunch of Bubba options to make this hold the accessories that, in my opinion, are necessary for a home defense firearm, namely a sling and a reliable, high output, instantly accessible weapon light. All of those things are more difficult to do with OEM handguard than they are with some of the aftermarket options. And then the one thing that a lot of people won't realize is that directly underneath this little hump here, is where the op rods for the gas system are. So you can't put anything, you can't drill into the handguard anywhere back here without risking impeding those moving parts from doing their job, and you can't have that. So those are the main cons when it comes to the OEM handguard. I know that some people have said, well, I like how I can slide my hand up and down the handguard as necessary. I have yet to find a philosophy of use of any defensive firearm that advocates for a wide range of movability of your hand on the handguard. That doesn't make sense, because defensive firearms typically have a weapon light and they have either a thumb cap or a tape switch somewhere. And if you're using your gun for a defensive purpose, you should always be gripping in a position where you can reach that button. So there should be no reason, if your weapon light actuates here, there should be no reason that you need to move your hand anywhere else on this handguard. That's not a thing. It isn't a thing. It's never been a thing. If you have a firearm with a weapon light, you should always be able to access that weapon light instantly. Okay. So the fact that you can't readily install a tape switch reliably back anywhere on the handguard means that most people that are running these for defensive use are running a weapon light with a thumb cap out on a pick section up in the front. And if you're 7 feet tall and have a 10-foot arm span, that's perfectly acceptable. But if you're like me and you're just a normal 5'10" Joe Schmo with regular sized arms, this holding all the way out here, blading yourself to the point where you're almost sideways against your gun just to be able to reach your thumb cap, that's not optimal. That's not the best way to do it. It reduces your ability to drive the gun. It reduces your ability to control muzzle rise and recoil. It's just not optimal. Not to mention the fact that you lose access to most of that really nice grip texture if you have to reach all the way up here in order to hit a thumb cap. So the OEM handguard is free, lightweight, and it works, but it is well outdated. All right, so I'm gonna swap this over to my Briley and I'm gonna explain the pros of the Briley and the cons. Okay, so I've swapped over to my Briley And I'll go over the pros and cons of the Briley compared to the OEM. So first, the cons of the Briley. The cons of the Briley compared to the OEM. It's heavier. Some people will find that to be a con. I personally actually think that's a bit of a pro for me, but I'll explain that later. It's heavy. It doesn't have a very good detent. The detent for keeping the mag tube in place it's really just there for looks. It doesn't really do anything. So for this one, I highly recommend that you maintain the barrel clamp to hold your mag tube in place. Otherwise, it will start walking off. I've found that if I remove my Briley and put it back on, tighten it all down and go to the range, occasionally I will have to fire a couple of rounds and then retighten it. And then that second tightening will actually lock it in place. I'm not sure if that's normal, if other people have dealt with that, but that's something that I've dealt with. Once it's tight, after those first couple of shots are in and you adjust everything, it's not an issue anymore. It's just kind of a little quirk of the way that it is designed. And then the biggest con on this one is just the cost. They're very, very expensive compared to other handguards. Even most AR handguards don't even reach the price point of this. I think these are like $340 or something like that. So you are paying a heavy premium for what you're getting compared to the OEM handguard that you literally don't have to pay any extra for. So those are your big cons. When it comes to the pros, in my opinion, the pros blow the cons right out of the water. The biggest pro is that it completely covers the barrel, completely encircles the barrel, so that barring, deliberately, I'm going to touch a hot barrel through my handguard, you're never going to get to that handguard while you're running and gunning. I certainly haven't. And I've gotten this thing nice and hot. I've run heavy firing schedules to this thing a few times, and I have yet with the Briley to have any incident of anything getting hot enough to be uncomfortable. And that's even when you can see the mirage coming up off of that barrel. I can grab right here and I'm still not touching it, which is really good. So that's the biggest one. The second one is obviously you have a huge wide field of M-LOK that you can use to optimize this with whatever accessories you choose. Now for me, like I've said before, every home defensive firearm, in my opinion, should have a bright, durable, reliable, easily, instantly accessible weapon light. Hands down, should be a top priority. And with the Briley handguard, it's just far easier for you to configure it for that purpose than it is with the OEM. There's no Bubba smithing, no Dremel work, no drilling, none of that stuff. You just find the M-LOK accessory that fits your needs and you put it on there and you move on with your life. Now, some people will say, oh, I don't need to put, a billion things on my handguard. It's just a shotgun. It's just for home defense. This might look like it's a lot of stuff, but it isn't. I have a stage saver. I have a stage saver so I can hold a spare round. Hold that one oh shit round if I need to, or I could put a slug here if I need something quick so I can swap to a slug to take a deer or something that's further out. I've got my weapon light and thumb switch, and then I have my reverse mounted hand stop that I use as kind of a recoil lug since I have some significant nerve damage in my support hand, and I need basically a crutch to be able to mitigate recoil the way I would if I didn't have those issues. So being able to do that, just that alone, being able to mount this little plastic thing on a stiff, consistent, durable platform that's going to hold it, that's going to take the recoil without flexing, that's going to allow me to drive the firearm the way that I want it to. Just this little thing right here is a huge plus. And that's just for me. I don't expect most people to have to do that, but being able to configure your firearm to your specific needs without having to do a whole lot of surgery is a huge plus for me. And then the other one is the weight. For a lot of people, weight, they say, oh, you don't want to add weight, you don't want to add weight. For recoil mitigation and muzzle rise control, having some added weight out in the front can actually benefit your ability to keep the gun on target. And that is a huge priority for me in a defensive situation. So having those few extra ounces, I think this adds about 6 or 7 ounces to the overall weight. It's not much, but it is enough to give you a little bit softer recoil and a little bit lower muzzle jump issue. And for me, that's definitely a plus. So those are the main reasons why I choose the Briley over an OEM handguard and even over the Aridus handguard. Now, this did used to have the Aridus handguard. This is a full LTT 1301. They did the full accessorizing job on it. And then as I used it, I came to realize that the Aridus itself wasn't actually addressing some of the issues that I was having with the defensive shotgun that also weren't being addressed by the OEM, namely the exposed barrel. The Aridus does have M-lock slots. It does have places where you can mount things. But even with the Aridus, there were some things that I did need to cut in custom. And I don't like cutting into polymer handguards. It reduces the structural integrity, makes them more flexible, and it just looks like shit. And I don't like my guns to look like shit. It's a minor gripe, but that's the way it is. So there you have it. Those are my thoughts when it comes to optimizing your 1301 for any given application. For home defense, I think if money isn't an issue, the Briley is 100%, hands down, the best handguard for optimizing a 1301 for home defense. It protects your hand from hot barrels, which allows you to train harder, practice longer. It allows you to install any accessory you feel you need, anywhere you feel you need it, to optimize it to your body geometry, any medical needs you might have, or just the best way to configure it for home defense. It's stiffer, it's a much more durable mounting solution for things like weapon lights and stuff like that. And it adds, for me, this is just a personal preference, it adds a little bit of weight up front that helps keep that muzzle down a little bit and helps mitigate some recoil. So those are the reasons why I choose the Briley over the other two options. When you take things like price into account, that makes things it evens the playing field a little bit. I think if you're building a 1301 defensive gun on a bit more of a budget, the Aridus Zukov I think is a good option. That it just misses out on that protection of the barrel, which is it's just such a huge priority for me. I think the OEM handguard it's a good handguard. It guards your hand from the barrel when you're just holding it, but it doesn't protect you when you start running hard. It doesn't protect you if you're a thumb over bore shooter. It's flexible, and it gets more flexible as it gets hot, and that's not fun. It doesn't allow you to mount accessories where you need them without going crazy with the Dremel, and sometimes you can't even do that depending on how far back you need to go and how close you are to the op rods. But on the plus side, it's free, and it has the best detent of any of the other handguards. So it's actually the only one that I really trust to keep the mag tube in place without a barrel clamp. So I hope that addresses any questions that anyone might have about choosing one over the other. I don't want anyone to think that because I have a preference and because I laid out these priorities and why this meets those priorities, I don't want anyone to think that choosing one of the other ones is a bad idea. I don't think it's the wrong choice. I think it just really depends on how hard how much effort you've taken into evaluating your optimization needs. And I think a lot of people that choose the OEM, they look at the price and that's it. They don't go beyond that. And if that is your top priority, that is your top priority. Sometimes you got to do what you got to do. But that kind of lays out how I feel about the whole thing. So what's more important than handguards is getting rounds downrange. So whatever handguard you choose, make sure that you get rounds downrange that you get patterns, that you get time stress, that you work on it, work the skill. And honestly, I think in doing that, you will come to see some of the same things that I have. And it might even lead you to make some of the same decisions that I have. But if it doesn't, that's okay. You know, it's your gun, it's your money, it's not mine. Hope that helps. And if you have any questions, go ahead and leave them down below. Have a good one.